Hey there. Welcome to GSPN's Milwaukee Bucks podcasts. Oh, we're off to a rough start here. Just like the Bucks were off to a rough finish against the Atlanta Hawks on Friday night. This is a Eurostep / Win in 6 crossover. We are still a part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network, the GSPN family of podcasts, and presented by our friends at Prize Picks, where you can use code Eurostep to get $50 when you play $5, win or lose the first time you play. Daily Fantasy on Prize Picks. I'm Ty Windisch, joined not as always by Rohan Kadi. The socialite couldn't make time for the Kuzmania game, but Jordan Treske, host of Win in 6, could. Jordan, how's it going, sir?
We're doing well. Socialite, I love. That's gonna stick. That's gonna stick.
Yeah.
That one is definitely sticking.
Rohan Gatsby. No, I think the problem is Rohan and I have recorded like 50 things together this week, and he just said that's enough time for me, which I get. Everyone gets that pass.
To oblige.
Well, thank you, Jordan. It felt like for a little while in this game, we were going to get to do a really fun podcast afterward because the Bucks had an insane second quarter against Atlanta after a solid start and poor finish to the first quarter, but then the second half was more of the first quarter for the Bucks. They end up losing to the Hawks 115-110. No Giannis Antetokounmpo in this game. Still dealing with the calf soreness, which frankly good, right? Don't want to push Giannis through any calf injuries after what happened last season. But he certainly would have helped in this game where Milwaukee just did not have enough offense outside of a few key players. We're going to get more to this game in particular a bit. And of course, we're going to talk Kuzma's debut. The other new Bucks did not play. Jericho Sims was active and cleared to go, but was a DNP CD, which I think is unfortunate. And then Kevin Porter Jr. is not yet with the team. So he has yet to show up, fortunately. But Jordan, before we get to this game, I want to talk about the Bucks trade deadline in general with you just a little bit. You know, everyone knows my thoughts, or everyone who's listened before. If you haven't, you'll pick up on them, I think, pretty quickly. But we also just did multiple episodes about the deadline, about the Khris Kuzma trade, everything else. So you can go check those out too. But Jordan, would love to hear from you. I know you dipped the pen to write about, the Middleton era ending, but would love to hear kind of your full deadline thoughts here.
Kudos to you. I'm not just saying this on pod. I listened to both the Khris Kuzma and trade deadline day because obviously it dipped into both days. I thought you guys broke it very well. Just it's more of like, because it's multifaceted. It's the Khris thing. There's plenty of emotion there. There's a lot of just like loaded things with like, okay, what does this mean? What, like, did they just abruptly decide to trade Khris? And some details have obviously emerged afterwards that paint some picture, but also paints like Khris has just been injured for a very long time, and they're like, yeah, we're pulling the trigger. We're not. I don't think he's that capable. But I had tried to kind of reserve judgment on the incoming players because one, like Kuzma, he's such a tough player to really assess.
Yeah.
When the best use of him was 3-4 years ago?
Yeah.
Before he got traded to the Wizards. Not to just play everything on the Wizards, but it was just like he hasn't played competitive or even aspired to play for like contending basketball like the Bucks are obviously aspiring to do this year. But there's obviously some things that I felt like, okay, he brings to the table. There are things that obviously it's hard to replace everything that Khris does. But I thought even in limited minutes with no practice, basically just like, hey, you just got into Atlanta. You just came to the team yesterday. You got in Atlanta this morning. Came for shoot around. We're going to play you, 24 minutes?
Most of any bench player. Oh, no, Trent played more. Second most of any bench player.
And how he was utilized is kind of like, I think there was more of a reason why we saw more minutes from Kyle Kuzma than like Jericho Sims when he's just kind of like a plug and play player.
Yeah.
Like he has the veteran status. It's like he can play a little bit on ball, but like a lot of the stuff that he was doing is like, it's either he's spotting up, ball swings to him, or he's doing some cuts. Like he has a very malleable game that I think in his case, it's like, yeah, that's why we're going to see him, even when he's literally arriving to the team.
Yeah.
And to see how his debut went. But It was kind of what I expected. I thought a little rusty, but also, again, you have no familiarity with your teammates right now.
Yeah, I thought there were more, I'd say, like fun moments than I probably expected game one. I mean, hit a couple threes that felt really big in the moment. And I thought one play that ended up just being he split the free throws, but the inbounds where he inbounds to Brook. Dame sets a down screen for Kuzma. The players stick around Dame, and Kuzma just bolts toward the rim to try and flush it. That, to me, that play where I felt like it crystallized, they've really wanted a player like this. I mean, you could probably, maybe they have. It doesn't come to mind. You could do the same thing with Giannis, but I think part of the appeal for getting someone who's athletic, who's not Giannis, is the attention is just different. There's always too many eyes on Giannis. Giannis can't be a great cutter because everyone's looking at him. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's just different, right? Like, there's too much attention. Kuzma, not quite that level of player. So I thought that, how much they went to him early, how much they got him the rock, too. I mean, he ended up taking 13 shots in this game. He was 4 for 13. He did not beat the inefficient scorer allegations. I'm with you, though. I'm not going to kill him for that just quite yet. First game, just showed up with the team, day of. Like, let's give him some time. Was 3 of 8 from deep, which is 37.5%. That's a big deal. I mean, if he can be around that percentage and doesn't always have to be 3 for 8, but that's really big after 28% with the Wiz. I thought defensively looked good. I thought the boards looked better. He had 7 boards in the 24 minutes, and some plays that you were just like, not a lot of guys on the Bucks make that play. Like, I remember one, I think in maybe the third quarter where Mo Gay, who, Jesus Christ,
that guy bolted out of the blue.
I mean, the Hawks have to be like, wait, what? Like, I don't think the Hawks do this. We
traded half our team yesterday, and I think we opened it up for Mo Gay.
Yeah, apparently we should have traded a little bit more. Marcus Johnson, always phenomenal. Goes Capella on the bench, watching himself get Wally pipped here. I was like, Jesus. I mean, he is, but new buyout candidate might have just dropped here. But anyway, he had a phenomenal game. I mean, credit. I mean, there were some of these plays where one of Kuzma's missed twos was like Kuzma runs out and is trying to deposit a layup right off the glass, and Gay just gets it before it could even hit. I mean, that was an incredible block.
It looked so close to being goaltending.
There was a couple that were.
It was like, oh, you know what? I'll give him that. Like,
yeah.
Again, vertical athleticism. The fact he just sprinted down. I think even Bobby tried testing him. AJ Green had a couple like fades. It's like that guy is super long. You can't really shoot over him.
He was 6 of 11 from the field and 5 of 6 from 2, 12 boards, 4 blocks for Mo Gay, the Hawks MVP in this game by far. Yeah. The Bucks weirdly do an okay job at containing Trae. Even though that behind the back fake got every Buck on the court. I mean, he started just doing it when he wasn't even like really driving. I think just to mess with the Bucks.
It was a weird game because, I mean, we've seen him certainly of the last 2 years. Like, the Hawks, even with making all the trades that they made, and they're playing like, it's kind of like, it's not JV, I shouldn't say, but it's definitely a depleted squad.
Yeah.
And we've seen Trae, like, he'd hit the long bombs, but also it's just like the way he manipulates. He knows how to make the kick ahead passes that, for a slow Bucks team in transition, getting back in transition on defense, it's always been a problem. And then he had a good pulse on the game, but it was just more of like, it didn't feel the same way of like how it had been like earlier this year or even last year.
He couldn't hit the kill shot.
No. And that's where I feel like in the fourth, that's why, as bad as it was for the Bucks in the second half, like they had plenty of chances.
Trent getting stripped below the rim, that felt like maybe if they get that, maybe they could have stolen it. And there were moments like that, to your point, sprinkled throughout the latter half. I mean, a lot of bricked good threes, too. I thought their offensive process sucked for a lot of the second half, but they did open up.
Yes.
AJ Green couldn't hit them. Kuzma had a couple good opportunities he couldn't knock down. So just one of those frustrating losses. Doc Rivers just now, according to Eric Name of The Athletic, I thought we completely, I'm trying to find the right word. I don't want to say we tricked off the game. Our casualness in the third quarter was ridiculous, and then we couldn't turn it back on. That's happened 3 or 4 times this year. I agree, Doc. I think Doc has some culpability with that. We will get to. But back to Kuzma. Overall, I thought encouraged. I see what the Bucks were going for. Like, again, there was a stretch when you're like, oh my God, this guy could be an incredible fit. The game on a whole ends up being not ideal. He has a minus 15. I'm not going to, again, totally blame him for that. I didn't think most of that was on Kuzma either. But 1 assist to 2 turnovers. Both of the turnovers were like probably in his first 2 minutes on the floor, where one of them was like he just read a guy's motion the wrong way and threw it away. Like things that I don't think you should blame a brand new guy for too often. But I thought the rebounding was nice. What I was going to say, Mo Gay, before I got distracted by his incredible game, is there was one point where Kuzma gets up and like slaps a rebound out of his hands to like Dame or Ajax. It's like, oh, we haven't seen a whole lot of that. Like Giannis, when he's really going for it, which he has not done a lot on the glass this season, frankly.
Maybe Ajax if he gets high enough, but it's like that's a 50-50 toss-up kind of thing.
Yeah, there were a couple like that where like really like contested rebounds, and he drew a foul on one, a defensive rebound. Like that is one of the things that I was a little excited about was, okay, if you get this guy at 6'9" out there as a 3 or 4, and he's going to really hunt the glass like that, that can help what's been a real weak point for Milwaukee. And I think we started to see that in this game.
I would agree. I think that's where it's the size, athleticism.
Yeah.
He brings, as much as there is the kind of bobbiness, is like, it's a loaded word.
He's got some Bobby perimeter variant to him for sure. And some of those turnarounds.
Yeah. And it's like, there is stuff like that, but there is I think the biggest thing, especially when you move on from Khris, you're obviously your 2 gravitational forces are Dave and Giannis. And then for 8 to 10 minutes of the game, you're trying, probably less than that, honestly. You're trying to kind of like makeshift something. Can someone create their own shot? Can someone lead the offense? Like there's 2 different things. I think that's why like a guy like Ryan Rollins is going to be very important. We don't want to talk about it, but it's why they made the decision, KPJ, to come in and give him some on-ball juice that way. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
But I just feel like for Kuzma, the biggest thing is like we know he can hit shots. Whether he spaces it or hits threes is obviously like the biggest bellwether. But it's like, is it in the flow of the offense? Because like tonight is like, as much as it was really frustrating to watch the Bucks, they got suckered in to hitting 11 threes in the game, or in the second quarter. They hit 8 threes the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And yet you don't have Giannis. It's obviously a lot of roster changes. It just felt like even with how frustrated Doc was getting on the sideline, it's like, well, they're not really doing the things that are moving the ball. Like they felt like they could just do the simple actions, kick it out there, move the ball there. Like when the second quarter was going on, it wasn't just that they were hitting threes. It's that like they're kind of playing in concert with one another. Like the ball is flowing. It's doing all those things. And this team is it's at their best when everything's flowing from side to side. And I feel like that's where the balance hangs for this team the rest of the way, is that they can either go from like that super flowing, like beautiful, pure basketball, and then it just stalls out. And that's where you need to find that balance there.
Yeah, I think they need to maintain their rim pressure, which I think one of the things the Bucks can struggle with is when it's not Giannis, whether he's just like not out there, he's just always, he brings so much of that for the whole team that they got over it versus Charlotte. I mean, it's Charlotte without LaMelo or Brandon Miller, et cetera, et cetera. And it felt like they couldn't overcome it. Like they opened up some decent at least threes for themselves in the second half, but they did not get to the rim much at all. That's one thing I think you need to see more of from Kuzma. So I think his 4 shots in the second half, 3 were threes. I think 1 was the one that got blocked by Mo Gay, if I remember right. I believe that was second half too. So that's the right idea, but and he only played less than 10 minutes, so Doc didn't feature him down the stretch of the fourth, which again kind of makes sense, right? Like given the context. but would like to see more of just attacking the basket from him. That's going to be important going forward. And then Portis, who always has to step up without Giannis, and to his credit, overall in the aggregate, did this game, but he was 3 of 9 in the second half, had 10 points, 7 boards, and 2 assists, and much better first half, 16 points, 8 boards, 4 assists, and a block. Still, don't want to say this is all on Big Bob, who played almost 38 minutes, had 26, 15, and 6. That is still the production you're looking for with Giannis out, but there was a stretch like in the second quarter or in the end of the first quarter or start of the second before that huge run when they just couldn't score, and then that was most of the second half too. And it just felt like there was no one who could like get 2 good shots at the rim in a row. And that obviously, the guy who can do that didn't suit up in this game, but you need to find some better answers than nobody else being able to.
That's the thing. It's really Giannis and Dame are the biggest, obviously, drivers of the ball when they had the ball in their hands for, a lot of possessions, but like 53s to 10 free throw attempts. And obviously free throw attempts are subjective, but it gives you an idea of like, are they forcing the issue? Are people touching the paint? It's different when it's like kind of the post-up moves. We've seen how the Bucks, and whether it's been Bud or Doc and a little bit of Griffin, it's like they try to manufacture post touches when the offense is stalling out. They're not hitting shots. Like, let's slow it up a little bit. I think part of like, if you want to play fast, as the Bucks are obviously leaning more towards now with roster changes and just how Doc wants to play, you can do those things, but that requires you to get back in transition and not get burned that way. It's like they just don't have a lot of on-ball drivers, and I think beyond Giannis and Dame, it puts more pressure on someone like Rollins to continue finding his game the right way. Obviously, we'll see how much Kevin Porter Jr. is used, but the overall idea is, that he offers a lot of the same things too. So, yeah, that's where the Kuzma thing, I wonder if he's going to be more of that way, or if he's going to find his flow cutting to the ball, like cutting to the rim, like that's how he gets to the paint. He has just kind of like, you see the outline of how it could be, but is it going to be he's dominating the ball? Is it going to be in concert with Giannis and Dame? I don't know. That's where it's trying to do all these adjustments on the fly in the second half of the season is going to be really tough to do.
Yeah, it is. Defining his role is going to be crucial. To your point there, they took 20 shots in the third quarter. 3 of them came within like the restricted area. And there was only like, there were like 2 in the paint, but not out, so like, floater or mid-range range, a couple more just outside the lane, and then mostly threes and mostly brick threes. And that's where you just get out of balance. And that's, maybe I sound like a geezer, but that's where like the 3-point thing, it doesn't work if you never touch the paint. And I feel like those Rockets teams prove that beyond a doubt. If you're not getting any paint touches, I just don't think it's sustainable over, maybe over a game here and there, not over a season or not over a playoff series. Again, this is probably not a long-term issue for the Bucks. They have the number 1 unassisted dunker in the NBA who's going to get them a lot of paint touches, but he's not going to be on the court for 48 minutes a night or every game the rest of his career. You need to be better than this. So that's one thing. And to Kuzma's role, which I think is a really interesting question. It was very funny. He started this game. I saw someone describe it like on your like meet your date's parents' best behavior. Like he gets into the game and immediately his first three things he does is pass after like 1 second, set a screen for Dame, and pass again. And I was like, I like the effort here, but you're not brought in to be tall Delon either. Like you do want to see him shoot a bit. And then he did shoot from there. Again, he ended up getting up 13 in 24 minutes, which is quite a lot. I thought some of his passes were actually quite good. Like I don't think he has like insane vision, but he can throw lasers. He threw, I'd say at least 2 passes that like one I remember clearly to Gary Trent Jr. in the corner. And I was like, whoa, that came out of there fast. That's going to be interesting with him, being able to create his own shot and kind of rumble and drive and post up and everything. There were too many post fades for me. That's what I don't like to see. And my hope is when Giannis is also around, there's going to be more clear lanes for him, and I want to see him go to the rim a lot more and use that frame. We'll see. I'm not expecting him to be a totally different player, but I just want to see that ratio move a little bit from post to, at rim or whatever. But I know, he is good at creating shots all over. You don't want to totally take any away, but also I don't want too many of those.
No, not at all. I think it's more of like, even if he's hitting those shots, it's like indicative of the ball is stopping. The rhythm it's flowing through one rather than flowing through all.
Yeah.
I think, to your point, I think the biggest thing is like he's a big dude. Like he's kind of like a supersized wing, which is why he's kind of always this tweener guy. And finding the right front court combination for the Bucks beyond the starting lineup, it's like throughout all 48 minutes, it's gonna be really, really interesting. But I think for him, it's like he clearly processes the game very clearly, whether it's like kicking out passes or knowing guys are in the corner if someone's collapsing on him. It's more of like, is he just too big with the ball in his hands, or like, what is it? This is like a 2K thing, but it's like when you have the ball in your hands, like I just remember the stupid skill of playing that game like way a long time ago. Like there are guys that have good handles, but they are like super slow with the ball in their hands.
Yeah.
I think he kind of has that where it's like, that's part of the ball stopping thing that you obviously don't want to see that carry over from the terrible Wizards.
Yeah.
But I see the outline. I see how it could work. It's just a matter of obviously a lot of other things falling into place beyond Kuzma.
Too. For sure. And then last thing I think on him for now, and this is obviously, it's the shiny new toy. We're going to be excited to kind of track everything. I mean, this quickly, I guess two more things. The energy level stuff and just engagement was obviously way, way better than it had been with the Wizards. You certainly hoped and expected that. And it's only the first game, but still nice to see. I mean, he was pretty much, I would say, locked in the whole game. And then second thing, he did not start.
Dream, baby.
What was it?
Midwest Dream.
The Midwest Dream, Midwest kid. So funny. He did not start this first game, which I think probably just makes sense. Just got there, everything else. But Doc said the plan is to start him with Giannis and do the big front line with Kuzma, Giannis, and Lopez, which we'll get to Lopez later in the podcast. But I like that idea, and I think that could be a way to use Kuzma well and just play into being big, which I think the Bucks probably have to do. I think they clearly didn't find a whole revamped suite of two-way athletes at the deadline, but they got one big two-way athlete, and now they can play him with their other huge two-way athlete and just hopefully be big to make up some of their lack of foot speed, which I think can work. I can't wait to see who starts next to him in that context. And I know we talked about this during the game, and I don't think we have to do a whole long segment because I'm guessing this weekend we're going to find out. Hopefully Giannis plays before All-Star. I guess we'll see. You got to be careful with the calf. But Andre Jackson Jr. in this game got back to the bad Ajax of catch it at the circle and immediately pass back out. In nearly 16 minutes, he took one shot, and it was a three that he missed. Had 4 boards, 2 assists, no other stats. I just worry a little bit that too many people are going to be operating the same area of the floor, and it's going to be a lot of Brook threes and Ajax jump passes if it's those 3 players starting. I don't know. There's obviously, with Ajax, then that's the biggest and the switchiest, and there's a lot of fun on the defensive end, I think, but offensively, and the Bucks offense has been struggling a bit, especially in this game. It leaves a lot to be desired. So I don't know what we're going to see. I'm fascinated at all of the options, but quickly, where do you kind of weigh in on, the starter next to Kuzma now that we know he is going to be a starter?
I think starter, I would go with Ajax, see how it works. The biggest thing, as much as they have a lot, I mean, now it's like their roster is so tilted towards the 3, 4, even 5 now with between Brook, a combination of Brook, Bobby, Giannis, Jericho Sims, Tyler Smith might be. I'm assuming he's probably going to see more G League time, but for right now, he's been with the big club.
Yeah.
But I think Ajax, you just have to try it because, one, I really like the size beyond Dame. Like, I think the switchability between Ajax, Kuzma, and Giannis is there. That's really big. Like, if you're essentially kind of usurping Taurean Prince, who I think his role is kind of he's been good this year, no doubt, but like he's kind of in this no man's land where I can see him being a fixture in the rotation, or he kind of just trails off because he can hit threes, but what he does best is better served by a guy like Kuzma if he's feeling it, if he's playing as good as the Bucks hope he can be. And defensively, it's like he's too passive is not the right word, but it's more where it's been trending, where he's not impactful. Like, there is the disruptive Andre Jackson Jr. that we know he can be, but it's still not enough to the point of like he's just playing to start the first and third quarters. I think the biggest problem that I would see happening is that Kuzma just comes in, and he's obviously going to be the guy that plays the most out of all the new acquisitions. And if you don't really change your rotation, you just expect him to this is how we envisioned Khris being, but now it's Kyle Kuzma. It's like you can't do it that way because things are going to change naturally by disrupting the order of how you had it previously. So I think you start with Ajax, you see if he can work, and if he just turns on the motor, finds more consistency, tries to do anything around the rim that isn't the slam dunk contest next weekend. I really wonder who they lean towards with point of attack defenders, because Ajax is your best one, but beyond that, it's like Rollins, Gary Trent Jr. It can vary from night to night. Like, that's still a big problem with this team, is that they don't have enough with options that way too.
It is, and it's going to be fascinating to see how Doc manages all of that. It's also fascinating to play daily fantasy with Prize Picks, America's #1 option for daily fantasy sports. Listen, we're recording on Friday night, folks. The big game is in less than 48 hours from the time of this recording, and there is just a huge opportunity regarding the big game on Prize Picks. Little-known quarterback Patty Mahomes, if he gets 1 yard, that's a win for your lineups. And on Prize Picks, you pick between 2 and 6, right? You pick one other player, you get the win there. Patty Mahomes gets a yard. That's a win. That could be that easy for you your first day on Prize Picks. So here's what you do. Go to your app store or your computer, I guess. Download the Prize Picks app, or just click the link in the description on this video or podcast, wherever you're listening or watching. There's a link. Use our promo code. It should auto-populate, but if it doesn't, your promo code Eurostat. You play $5 for the first time. Win or lose. Again, you get Patrick Mahomes, half a yard. I feel pretty good about your plays with that one, but win or lose, you get $50 on us here at GSPN. So make sure to download the Prize Picks app today. Get ready for the big game. Add a little extra something, or the Bucks play that night too, right? You can sprinkle in NBA. You can ignore football if you want to. Whatever you're feeling. Check out the Prize Picks app today. Get $50 when you play your first $5 lineup, and you don't even have to win. Prize Picks, run your game. Trent in this game looked like, this guy should be the 5th starter. But I couldn't agree more with you. It waxes and wanes so hard. Where it's like there are games when you're just like, he is electric. He's everything. He's hitting these movement threes. He was 19 points, 5 of 8 from deep, 4 assists, 3 steals in this. That's everything you want. Obviously didn't end on a good note. Probably could have gotten an upstock, but I was just too disappointed with the way the game went to give out upstocks. And then there's other games when, defensively he's just not really involved. I mean, he fell asleep on a bad one this game too, but it happens to everyone on this team, unfortunately. He has just not been consistent enough. I will say since, his hot streak started, on the whole, he's been very good overall, offensively more than defensively. Yeah. Maybe he's the best combination of both. Like AJ Green, there's just foot speed concerns. He had a pretty bad game against Atlanta overall on both ends. Like I think he's a fine perimeter defender. I've been advocating for him to start. I would still like to see it, but I mean, you're just at a foot speed disadvantage with him and Dame. But you can always bring in someone off the bench. I don't know. I don't know where they're going to go. I think it's kind of fascinating, to be honest.
It really is, because it just felt like for years. I mean, I think Rohan brought it up.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we talked about, like, you go from Malcolm Brogdon, you go from Brogdon to Wesley Matthews to who was the starting two championship year?
I guess it was Dante at first, and then I guess PJ Tucker.
Yeah, PJ Tucker, that was actually the thing that I kind of was coming to mind, is that it's not a championship level like outline, but it's like the Bucks are really good. They found their niche as like a super big team when they won the title. They attacked the boards, like that was the key to unlocking everything, on top of Khris going on an all-time heater and Giannis coming back from, like basically they had everything in spades of like versatility, all guys touching the ball, being able to hit threes sometimes in some of those games. Yeah. But I think like with how much size they've added to the team, now it's like, okay, beyond Dame just playing like 30 to 35 minutes, and obviously that's going to ramp up even more in the playoffs. It's like, who is that second guy that like you're just constantly like going through year after year? Just like, is it going to be this guy? Is it going to be Malik Beasley, Gary Trent Jr.? It's like, it can work, but it's not a clean fit. It's dependent on everything else. Like, I really do think like eventually we'll see Gary Trent Jr. as the starter, probably by playoff time. Yeah. But I still don't feel good about like, that's who has to guard the best perimeter scorer on really good teams. Yeah. The teams that you want to be in the playoffs. And we saw how it was last year. It's like, there's a limit. There's a bandwidth that the Bucks can suffer with that. Okay, we can live with that. It's like, you're exceeding that bandwidth. So I think like you want to give the chance to someone like Andre Jackson Jr. or even Rollins, who's obviously trending upward, but they're not there yet with their games or even confidence that it does pale in comparison to someone like Gary Trent Jr., who knows what he's doing and feels good about things, whether it's, going well or not.
Yeah, I almost wonder if they get to a point where they just go matchup based purely in the playoffs. Like, because I think you could afford a Green or a Trent against teams that are more forward focused. Like, this might sound insane, but like the Celtics, like you're going to put Dame on Drew. You're probably going to you could put AJ Green on Derek White. I don't think you're that concerned. And then you have, of course, Giannis and Kuzma now are going to be on the forwards out there. Like, maybe then you could afford it, but I think against Cleveland, you're going to need to guard more smalls and fast smalls in, Garland and Mitchell now. So I think it really is going to depend.
Even like Indiana, right now, that's where we're going back to Indiana if the season ended now. So it's like, that's a team that plays fast, has a lot beyond Halliburton. You have like Benedict Mathurin. You have Ben Shepherd. Like, that's a team that has plenty of options on the wing, combo guards, obviously at the point. It's like, I like the options that the Bucks have. I just think a lot of it overlaps. Yeah. Like, Green and Trent can be flamethrowers, but also you have to sop up all of the juice from the best perimeter scorer on the other team. So it's like, can you be that mop? Can you mop up all the crap that no one else wants to do? I don't know.
I think they're going to have to continue getting creative with like sending help or doubles. Like we saw a little bit of that later, I'd say, in the Hawks game, or, just you got to be a force in the lane. I mean, you cannot leave these guys on pure islands. But speaking of like Indiana and that kind of matchup, those faster teams, which is certainly what the Hawks were. I mean, Brook Lopez ends up with 16 points on 7 of 15 shooting, which is fine. Like, the stats aren't terrible. I just felt like he couldn't get 2 good possessions in a row in this game. I mean, offensively, some of the roles were just very uncharacteristic. Usually he's got good touch on those, was not able to like hit some of those like running floaters and everything. Defensively, just felt like always a step or half step too late to get to, whether it's the cutter, whether it's Mo Gade making his moves around the basket. A tough game for Brook. I did hope that a little bit more time off and like days between games, like he could look a little fresher. Did not look that fresh in this game. I was disappointed we didn't get Jericho Sims. It felt like a perfect, I know he's new, but it felt like a perfect opportunity with no Giannis against the exact kind of team that gives Lopez the most trouble. I know there's people out there saying, oh, every team gives him trouble, every team's athletic. It is different. Like the slower teams, the teams with bigger centers, it's not like this. This game was rough, and I think the Bucks stock specifically is going to need to trust Sims in some of these matchups, especially since, you still have Bob there who you have to accommodate for defensively. Like, I think they're just going to need him sometimes, and I really hope we don't just see him stapled to the bench the whole year.
I mean, you make granted, it's trading DeLon Wright, who obviously fell. The rotation was a minimum signing that did not work out. The Bucks have had plenty of those over the years, let me tell you. My worry, as much as he is very interesting, certainly bouncy as hell, a guy that if he's out on an island, there were obviously some Celtics possessions that looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. I think he, as much as we want to see like that switchable center, and it's something that they really, Giannis is the closest comparison to it, but he's not a center.
Yeah.
He'll never be a center. I just think like the rap that Doc had in Philly is that when a B was out or the backup center minutes, it went to DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah.
Instead of Paul Reed, who seems like a guy that, did he get waived by the Pistons?
They waived him and re-signed him.
That's what it was. Yeah. I was like, just a guy that's super interesting and that I think is a good center, but for whatever reason just hasn't gotten his shot like consistently.
Yeah.
I just think for all like the reporting, I think it was James Edwards from the Athletic that was saying like the Knicks wanted to do right by Jericho Sims, get him to a spot that he was going to play, because obviously Tom Thibodeau plays all his starters 48 minutes a game, like it's CPUs.
Yeah.
But all like the positivity, like we want to see him play, get him some money this summer. That's the Knicks insights of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if Doc is going to feel the same way. I think he's going to ride the old heads and be comfortable with that, unless it's the stuff in practice. It's the stuff that is Jericho Sims going to get, what the Bucks are going to do defensively, and we can lean on him for 10 to 12 minutes. Like your point on an earlier podcast this week, it's like they haven't had a center like that. Like, and I'm only saying this.
I need your take on this. Yeah.
The last center that really like kind of gave what Jericho Sims is, and they're not the same player by any means. It's honestly Miles Plumlee.
Oh yeah.
Miles Plumlee, there's a reason why the Bucks paid him a contract that was such a terrible contract.
Yeah, Giannis was like throwing up lobs to the plum dog.
And he was certainly not like switchable, but he was a springy rim running center that, let's spoon feed him baskets. We need some. Jason Kidd has collapsed the 3-point line so much that we need just someone to score here. Yeah. But that, again, there's not really, because even Larry Sanders, he had some of that game in his game, but it's like, that's not how I remember Larry.
Yeah, he wasn't jumping out of the gym.
But I that's where I think he's a good pairing for Dame, certainly.
Yeah.
But you're doing that maybe with Bobby at the 4 and then two other shooters.
That's what I want to see. Yeah.
Just how much we see of that, I don't know if it's going to be a lot.
The Brook Bob pairing to me is just not going to work. I just think that it has to be so specific. Like, there's just too many teams now. Their 4s are too fast. Their 5s are too fast. Like, neither guy is great, and you're just asking a lot from both of them. Neither guy is great with speed defensively. And I think going forward, a goal should be when Giannis is healthy, and hopefully Sims gets integrated to some degree. Again, it was the first game. He was not the Kuzma, like the goal of the Khris Middleton trade, right? On a much different level. He was a very minor addition to that trade and only cost a frankly useless to the Bucks player in cash to get him. I get all that, and Doc is big on practice and everything. And there's, a back-to-back coming up. Like, is Brook going to play both halves? He's been on the injury report lately. Maybe not. Like, maybe there will be a clearer opportunity. But I would love it if the Bob minutes going forward were like, he's always with Giannis or with Sims.
Yes.
So I just think he could use that back line and just let him be a 4. Just find the stiffest guy on the other team and say, stay in front of that guy, and then clean the glass, which he's done a great job. He had 15 boards in this game. They missed that a lot, and he's come back in these last 2 games since the bereavement leave, which very sorry to Bob and his family. But you can tell he feels like he's seen from being away like they needed this because he is all over the boards. It's made a big difference for the Bucks.
I know the instant reaction is like, well, yeah, him and Kyle Kuzma cannot be on the same team together. I certainly had that reaction too.
Yeah.
But I think with Bobby, it's like there is always something there. He's not the perfect player. There's a reason why for years that we're like, hey, if the Bucks are going to make any significant trade deadline swing, it's either going to be aggregating Pat Connaughton and Bobby in a deal when they could do that. And then it's like, can they do that separately? It's like, no, it's like Bobby Portis just kind of fits the Bucks. And it's not perfect, but it's a fit nonetheless. That's how it is. You get your jeans on one leg at a time, and Bobby Portis is like the same as us. But I think for him, I totally agree. It's how they obviously had to operate with their front court options before when it's him and Brook on the same floor. But like they now have the guys that can cover the ground. Like Bobby is not a perfect defender. He's better more in space, but that obviously has limitations in its own right. Even with all that said, like he plays with the force.
Yeah.
When he has it feeling or like when he has it going, it benefits the team. It's obviously you will see more nights like that rather than not, but he has been on the aggregate good. It's just whereas like he was a legitimate like 6-man of the year candidate, like 21, 22, 23, even with the down shooting year that year. Like there are more good nights than bad. It's obviously changed as things around the team have changed, but there's still like something there that I'm always going to kind of talk myself into Bobby giving the team more and hopefully that working out with obviously the changes they made in the last couple of days.
I was gonna say, I think they need more than ever his off, or not more than ever. I think probably still the most in like the Drew days, just because they just needed. I mean, they needed to grind out their 98 points or whatever. But more than any time since they've gotten Dame, for sure, they're gonna need a little more consistent scoring from Bobby now that Khris is gone and. I think maybe he realizes that too. We'll see. I mean, Kuzma's going to step up and take some of that load on offensively, but I don't think he's going to take all of it. Like, I think a lot of his role is going to be doing other things. I think Bob being a consistent scorer is a big deal. And I think, honestly, he does okay when he's just a 4. He's just out there on the perimeter. He mostly stays in front of guys, but you get him in space trying to defend an area, and it just doesn't go well. It doesn't go well in drop. It doesn't go well in zone, I don't think. So I hope they can just streamline his defense and let him do his thing offensively. 4 for 8 from deep in this game. Big deal if he starts to hit threes consistently again. Just opens up the floor a lot.
Yeah. I think the Kuzma thing, if he is, he is going to be a starter.
Yeah.
That puts even more pressure on Bobby to be Bobby off the bench. There is that difference of like, if you are expected to be, this is your best scorer off the bench, the guy that we're going to give him plenty of touches that kind of flows out the rest of the offense. Like that's on Bobby to be, at least a 13 point per game score. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it is off the bench if he's doing that consistently.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Kuzma has to find the way to fit in around, the new changes that he's coming into rather than Bobby he has to walk out there and do what we hopefully can expect from him night in, night out. And I think that's a much easier role to take on, given that he has played with Dame, obviously has played with Giannis much far longer, and hopefully having a more rim protecting 5 or switchable 5 next to him mitigates all the concerns of like he's just gonna get run off the floor. Like frankly, a lot of the Bucks were getting run off the floor the last couple, really last year and chunk of this year too. Yeah,
I'm also the new starting lineup will be fun with that big front line. like the Kuzma Bob Giannis lineups could be really fun too. Like, are they big enough and fast enough? Are they going to clean the glass? Are they not? I don't know. I think like maybe that's a bench lineup mostly. So maybe it's like Rollins and one of the shooters in those three. I don't like. It is just it's an exciting variable, and you miss Khris. You see him on the bench as AJ Johnson and lights up the Wiz with a really fun dunk. Glad AJ Johnson's seemingly going to get to play some in Washington. Had a fun debut game, some assists too. But it is like things just look a little different now with this added big athleticism of Kuzma in the lineup so far. We'll see if we see Sims or KPJ as well. But it does feel like, okay, you need to do a lot less accommodating of athleticism now. You're just starting at a much higher, and I know Khris didn't play all the time, but when he was in there, like Khris and Dame and Brook sometimes was a lot to overcome. Now you're down to, I think, two of those guys that you're worried about from athleticism standpoint, and maybe you can minimize their minutes together.
That was really that's been the Bucks' problem for a couple years now.
Yeah.
Really, the Heat 8-1 matchup blew open just how old and slow that the Bucks were trending. That only until really now that they've obviously had some draft picks like Andre Jackson Jr. or even Chris Livingston and stuff.
Ajax has been the other real impact to the other side at this point.
Yeah, and I think now it's like they have mitigated some of those questions, hopefully, but it really is. I keep coming back down to finding the right combinations for it all to work. They made it
crucial.
They made it work enough to be a 4 or 5 level team, like seeding wise, obviously, because that's where they are.
It's pretty much where they've been since. The horrible start, and they stormed back to like around there. I mean, they never really got that close to 3. They never were in 3, and now they've been 4. Now dropping to 5, and hopefully retaining or getting back to 4 pretty soon.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the combinations, because it's like there's a lot of overlapping qualities that you like. Some guys are going to have it some night, like whether it's as simple as like just hitting shots, or defensively, who's going to be a guy that can kind of give some pressure on ball. Don't make it so easy for the other team to just run down the other end of the floor and score. And then obviously the big thing is like I really am curious of like there's going to be someone that was a holdover pre-trade that is obviously not just Giannis and Dame or even Brook, because he's pretty established as a starter regardless of some questions of, someone that's getting older.
Yeah.
I really wonder if it's going to be Taurean Prince that kind of fades, because it's like you just got Kyle Kuzma. Giannis is going to be playing plenty of minutes. It's like he's so firmly a 4, 3.5, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That like he's not going to be a starter again, I don't think.
Unless they go jumbo and start him at the 2, which I don't trust him enough defensively. I think he is. I think the stars do it, and it still annoys you, but they are the stars. He is like one of the most like lackadaisical defense guys or rebounding guys sometimes in a way that can be very frustrating.
And he's been fine for the Bucks. Like it's kind of what you expected, but I did kind of like assume that there would be a little bit more resistance defensively. I think he's just kind of like when someone gets a good first step by him, he is always just constantly like like grabbing like their arms to like do anything. So he's the guy that I'm kind of circling as like he might not be playing as much as he was, Yeah, someone's gonna be feeling it regardless if it's Prince 100%. Or so who else.
They have too many players now. I mean, they'd have more than 10 guys, and that's not even counting like a Connaughton or a Porter Jr. Like the existing starting 5 that was still all around: Dame, Ajax, Prince, Giannis, Brook, which we know is getting changed. You had Kuzma, who's clearly going to play and he's going to start. Bobby's going to play. AJ Green, Gary Trent, Ryan Rollins, maybe Sims if he's going to play. And then the other two guys, Connaughton was out this game with a calf injury, I believe, not a serious. I think it was either a strain or a contusion. Was, I think, questionable, and then ended up being out. There's just a lot of guys. I mean, I'm not even going to say Tyler Smith. Like, I think that is over at this point. I think Sims is the big who would play if one would.
Yeah. He was in case of emergency.
Yeah, same with Livingston. I think the moment has passed for those two for now, and I feel like I'm still missing someone. Maybe I'm not, but it's a lot of guys. It's going to be, I think Doc is probably going to be playing like 10 or maybe even 11 guys in first halves of a lot of games, to your point, to kind of see what combinations are working, who's got it, who doesn't. It's going to require Doc being very good down the stretch, which I think overall his Bucks tenure he has. But he's going to have to pull the right levers and figure some things out. And there's going to be some people frustrated on the team. And I think fans who are saying, oh, Ajax is getting even less minutes, or Green only got 10 minutes in this game. Like, that's just kind of a consequence of the way this roster is built.
Yeah, he's not as Doc is an old school coach of like, he sees things work or how players play with one another. Whereas like kind of the newer or more the Joe Mazzulas of the world.
Yeah.
They'll pull the levers of like, this guy doesn't play any minutes and he goes from doing that to playing like 30.
Yeah.
Doc is not really that type of, he's kind of an old school coach
it'll be like,
that way.
He'll like toss a guy a chance.
Yeah.
It'll be like, oh, Ryan Rollins just got 6 minutes in this, right? Like, what's going to build off of this? And then it kind of progresses from there.
And he did, I mean, obviously there's, the Bucks were in a tailspin immediately to start the season.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're embarking on a new territory and trying to hold on to at least a front court playoff spot is, I think, just my goal at this point.
Yeah.
It's the most realistic goal at this point, I would say. I really wonder how he can kind of find the right combinations when you're not going to have a lot of practice time. You're doing it on the fly, which that's really been the Bucks kind of thing for the last 2 years, basically since the Dame trade, is that you have to figure these things out on the fly. There are going to be a lot of ups. There's going to be second quarters like tonight, and then there's going to be 3 other quarters that it's like, where the hell did the team that just put up 47 points in the second quarter and hit 11 threes, where did that go?
Yeah.
I think you're trying to find that median or the mean and keep raising it higher and higher. That he's got options, but are you going to find the right options consistently it's the big question.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing that this deadline did is, and I think the Bucks were kind of getting here anyway, but it like crystallized it, is a lot of pressure on Dame and Giannis now. And these are guys who are used to that, but Dame in this one ends up 37% from the field, 31% from three. Did have 23 points, 9 rebounds, and 10 assists. Not a bad game by any means. Nearly got the triple-double. Had 3 offensive boards for the first time since opening night.
He skied for it. It was the best possession of the night where the ball was flowing. Andre Jackson Jr., of course, did not put up a point-blank shot, but he passed it out to Kuzma in the corner. He missed, but it was like, wait, that's Dame? Like, Dame literally rose up and didn't dunk it, but put home like a second chance bucket that like the possession was great, but the finish was even better. Like, that was Dame. Like, what is he doing?
Yeah.
He was doing a lot of like, even getting on the trying to like get loose balls on the floor. Like, he was working it tonight. And unfortunately, it didn't work out the way that we wanted.
It didn't. I feel like sometimes he is almost like he's like the icon for how things are going with the Bucks. Like, when they're playing as a team, he's the bellwether. When they're playing as a team and they're, we're playing the athletes and we're switching and we're putting in the work, really, you'll see Dame like rotate over, and he had, I think, did he have a couple steals? They didn't give him any steals. I'm pretty sure he should have had at least one steal.
He got his hands on some stuff.
Yeah. But he's doing that. He's skying in for the second chance. He had a big rebound where he came in and like closed a possession, laid like a defensive rebound. It's like, okay, those are big possessions. And when the other Bucks kind of lays through, you can, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but you can kind of see Dame too is like, all right, if everybody else on the team isn't going to, try to, Kuzma took a charge. That was one of the fun moments, like the first half. Like, he sees everyone else doing that. You see those more from Dame. When everyone's kind of going through the motions, I think you see Dame start to do the same, whether it's purposeful or not. And this game, like the good part of this game, the second quarter, it was, okay, we're playing fast and we're cutting and we're getting some offensive rebounds. They didn't end up with a ton in this game. They had 7, but they usually have like none. I was interested, and I hope we see some more, of this style of play from the whole team, not just from like, okay, Kuzma and Andre Jackson are going to run hard and everyone else isn't. Like, it needs to be a team thing.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when now your other team or opposing teams are going to be loading up more on Damian Giannis. I mean,
yeah,
that's really the Bucks were already like sputtering when it was like, okay, the threes aren't coming in the third quarter. Then all the Hawks really had to do was start doubling. Yeah.
Yeah.
So who's going to make plays without the ball? Like, obviously, you can do that with Dame far out on the perimeter, and he's not going to, try to put up a logo 3. Certainly do that with Giannis when he can't shoot as well as anyone else can. So then it's like, okay, Kuzma can kind of benefit from that, but also, is there anybody else?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a cutting Andre Jackson Jr. that record scratches right at the rim? That's where it's so obvious. Like, that's how other teams are going to load up on them. That how do the Bucks prepare for that, and how much do they prepare for that? Because it's such an obvious be the number one move that we make. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. They need to counter that harder, whether it's just Dame getting trapped or like the whole, like the pick and roll getting blitzed, like when just throwing a bunch of defenders at Giannis and Dame. They need better answers. I think some of the hope with Kuzma, I assume, is like he is more qualified than basically anyone else they've had to kind of kill that situation. And Khris is a better offensive player, but just doesn't have the athletic juice, right? I think part of what they need is there's a guy you can kick it to who, if you close out too aggressively, he can just get to the rim. And I think they really have not, Ajax can do that. Is he going to? Has been a different question. And teams are just gonna, they're gonna say go ahead and shoot, right? Like they're not gonna guard him in the first place. I think Trent is one of the more qualified options, but his off the dribble game can be shaky. It's really just the threes with him sometimes.
It's pretty limited.
Yeah, which goes back
as good
into
as he is an NBA player, but it is like curling off of screens and maybe blowing by a guy occasionally. Like
he had
pretty.
A couple nice finishes off of steals, like he can do it, but he goes too often to like a really kind of awkward floater pull up sort of thing. It just doesn't.
Yes.
He gets uncomfortable the way his step back too is fine. It's not great, but it's fine. But his in between areas game is a little rough still. So that's one, like Kuzma's got a good floater. Like if he can attack that, that's a big deal for the Bucks.
And he's just big. Again, it comes down to like he can kind of see over other guys if they're going to throw kind of a smaller wing on him.
Yeah.
Or if you're going to try to play him with like a 4 on you, kind of like old school 4 doesn't really exist nowadays. But like someone that's a little slower footed but is bigger with size, like Kuzma can kind of get a good step. His first bucket was a good, tough floater.
Yeah.
Is he going to be bouncy enough that like, Again, I remember seeing him play with the Wizards when the Bucks would play him. But Lakers Kuzma, as much as that was a few years ago, he had a little bit of like bounce to his game that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if I think also he had like a calf injury this year. It's like that can kind of hurt and sap your athleticism over the course of the season. So we'll see if he can give it some juice that way too.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I think he is already. If he was on the team all year, would be top 4 on the Bucks in dunks. It's Giannis obviously is like I think most in the NBA, so he's first on the Bucks by a mile.
Oh man,
I pulled this stat. So Giannis in 1,431 minutes has 161 dunks. That's a lot. That's a lot of dunks for anyone. Brook in 1,541 minutes has 29 dunks. So 132 dunks
Jesus
had Giannis.
Christ. That is like Ricky. I read the Ricky Henderson book very recently.
Oh, nice.
That Ricky Henderson had more steal or stolen bases to himself than like 6 teams of the 80s.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what that is.
Leagues ahead. I mean, Brook has 110 more. And he actually, this is before the game. He did dunk. So he's up to 30 dunks.
That's true.
Jericho Sims in 422 minutes has 22 dunks.
So
8 behind Brook in 1,000 less minutes. 1,000.
Two of their three newest Bucks just walked in and were 4 and 3 on their most dunks list.
Actually, so I missed him in the first time. But Kuzma then in 887 minutes has 17 dunks this year, so that would now be fourth on the Bucks with counting Sims. Kevin Porter Jr. also has 17 dunks.
Oh, okay. The year.
So he would round out your top 5. Andre Jackson Jr., dunk contest participant, has 15 dunks in 820 minutes. This is like a trivial stat that I've never cared about before, but reading through this, I'm like, you know what? They did need more dunks. It's not good for a basketball team if you have one guy who dunks.
Who's leading the league with dunks, but
but still,
there's no other person to be
if he's not dunking, you're just not seeing dunks. Yeah,
do what he's doing, and he's like, no, we're not going to do that.
I mean, Sims is per minute is so far ahead of everyone else on that team.
Oh yeah,
I just want to see some big man dunks badly. And then Bobby Portis has 7 dunks. That's next up in a lot of minutes.
AJ Green notably has
0 dunks. 0 dunks.
Dame has 2, maybe.
Let me pull it up. 2 sounds right. If that's correct, I'm going to be very impressed. Shooting.
I can at least think of 2. 3. He's got 3. Okay.
3. So I played this game with Rohan, actually. I think people enjoyed it. So we already did most of the leaderboard. This will only be guys who have done it on the team. So guess who's next after Bob, who was, before the new additions, 4th with 7 dunks?
TP?
No, TP's dunked twice. There's a player who's dunked 4 times.
Gary Trent?
Gary Trent Jr. has not dunked this season.
Are you serious?
He has not dunked.
God, this team has no vertical athleticism beyond Giannis.
The 4 players to not dunk, of course, AJ Green, DeLon Wright, of course. AJ Johnson did not dunk with the Bucks. He had many dunks with the Herd, so I'm not going to count him.
Why am I blanking already? Who the hell is on this team?
It's not a player you would expect.
Who the hell is on this team? I watched almost all Bucks games. I cannot think of another person.
You would have seen it. You would have seen it more if you watched Herd games.
Oh, Tyler Smith.
Tyler Smith, 4 dunks in 75 minutes.
Jesus Christ.
Pat Connaughton, 3 dunks. Ryan Rollins, 3 dunks.
Right.
400 minutes each for those 2. So, not a big dunking team. CL had as many dunks as Taurean Prince. And then Middleton, Marjan, Stanley Umude, and Liam Robbins have all dunked once.
Oh.
I'm going to say, Gary Trent, you need to catch Khris Middleton in dunks this season, in Bucks dunks this season. Can he not dunk? I mean, I feel like he's been on a lot of breakaway fast breaks. He gets steals at the half court. He's good.
That was a moment tonight where he. I don't know if he jarred it loose or it was when the Bucks were at least down like 7 points or 5 points, and that was like right before the turnover, or maybe that was the turnover possession. I was like, this could go really badly.
No, it was. I think they were down 4, and if he made the layup, they would have been down 3 or 2, obviously, and then got stripped.
And he's just like, he's such a I like him. He's done well this year. I just thought he was going to be more of like an upgrade on Malik for sure. Of like the scoring wise, where I see Malik Beasley doing pretty well with the Pistons. Like they're kind of the same play. He's better maybe. He might be like problem? At least for right now. I don't know. I'm trying to see. Where are their dunks?
It's way down in shooting of Basketball Reference.
Most dunks he had in a year was 20. He had 8 last year. I cannot believe
Gary Trent had 20 dunks. Wow.
But he's not a dunker.
No, not well. It's surprising how low dunk numbers are. Because I remember I looked this up with Ajax going to the dunk contest. I was like, he's barely dunked. So I went to see like what other
barely shot.
barely shot, but also barely dunked. And like Zach LaVine one of the most electric dunkers in league history,
Yes.
has one season where he dunked like once per game. Or no, that's not true. Okay, where he had at least 70 dunks. Only once. Like one time he had 69 dunks in 63 games, so that's more than once a game. But otherwise, so back-to-back years he did. He had 88 dunks in 1920, which is a ton. But then the rest of, and obviously it's trailed down a little bit. Actually, this year he has 46 dunks in 44 games. And then that's it. Oh, no. Yeah, sorry, that's it. So, it's harder. Dunks are rarer than I thought they would be. But for the Bucks, they've been extremely rare outside of Giannis, who, of course, is the number one dunker.
That's the problem. Yeah, this is the athleticism question. This is why someone like AJ Johnson. I didn't mention this part of the trade. I know a lot. There's some people in the corners of Bucks fandom, internet. I understand. He's kind of the ultimate lottery ticket. He can turn out in so many different ways. He's so young. He's so raw. He's certainly going to help the Wizards this season in their tanking chances, but by playing a lot more than he were with the go-go now.
Yeah.
But I had to admit it's not that they're proud to say, but like I'm just never really attached to him in any way because it's like I don't know if he's gonna be on the team. Like the fact that he was kind of like, yeah, that's gonna be the pick that the Wizards take on. It's like, yeah, that sounds right. Like the Bucks make this big, like we really like his intangibles, like what he did, like yada yada yada. And it's like, yeah, if he's ever good, it's like it's gonna be like 2032 and Giannis might not be on the team by then. Like it was always like that. I saw the vision of like what it could be, but like at the Bucks to actually like execute it, it's like probably not.
Yeah, I thought they were doing a good job with what he was working on and everything with the herd. It was off to a pretty good start. I don't think he was as far away as we first thought. But I do agree, like, you're really trying to win, like, always right now or, like, right now and the next year. And it's like maybe next year he could help you a bit. Like, I don't think he's going to be a starter next year by any means, but maybe he could be, like, your off-the-bench point guard by then. And if you can save that 31 pick, which just has universal value, whoever you're trading with, like, they're going to be interested in that pick versus, the Wizards clearly like A.J. Johnson. They could be the only other team that really cares about him, right? Like, it's... I had someone be like, they should have tried to include CL instead, Chris Livingston. They probably don't care about him. I mean, they're not picks anymore. They're prospects now. Like, teams get a lot pickier.
That, and it's like developmentally wise, it's like, well, Chris Livingston has already been in the NBA for nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
AJ Johnson's like super, he was a first round pick, so you have 4 years of roster control. And whether he's good or, like, he fits more, it only reinforces why everybody that follows the draft and can do that and follow like what the Bucks were doing and how do they draft well. You pick a player that didn't meet your timeline, and we're always like, well, for Bucks fans, like that's true, but it's also like it's fun to think of like what he could be. It's like, but he might not even meet that, and a lot of people I think nationally or beyond Milwaukee, we're just kind of looking at like, yeah, that didn't really make sense. Now it's like, yeah, he's going to be a throw-in in the Khris trade. Like he went to the best place possible. Like they're not trying to win now, clearly.
No. Or next year.
And he can play without any restrictions, any kind of like, there are no trading wheels for him right now. And that's honestly good for a kid that's so young and raw right now.
Yeah. Yeah, we shall see what, if anything, comes of his career. Fun Wizards debut for him today, though. I think that's all I've got. We're going to do a quick pod. It's well over an hour. That's just how it goes when you're talking Bucks. Anything else from you on Kuzma or anything else Bucks, Jordan?
No, I think hopefully we start, maybe Giannis plays Sunday, but we'll see how everything kind of fills in and maybe, it's not going to be. I just feel like the Bucks have been so streaky this year. Like this, obviously, this game kind of was a microcosm of that. That hopefully it's kind of not like high tide, low tide, high tide, low tide. It's like they can sail smoother waters from here on out.
Honestly, even if they're still jagged before the break, I would just love if they could come back from All-Star with a little bit of content. It would be nice if Giannis could play in at least one of these games for that purpose, like get him some minutes with the new Kuzma lineup and everything. But yeah, I think hopefully they can come out of the break the right way, even if it's a little rough before then, and just get on the right path. Just play the right kind of ball by playoffs, get in that 4 spot. And then if you can get your Pacers revenge, you get Cavs, and you only have to play one of Celtics Knicks. That's looking way too far ahead. The Bucks just have to win in the first round first, but it's not a nightmare path if 4 is your ceiling. If you end up there, you got to beat good teams no matter what in the playoffs. That's not a bad road forward, considering just how good the top of the East is.
I would agree. I think this team has, again, we see the outline of what they could be. They have the capabilities of hopefully breaking this current playoff series drought, but filling it in, finding the right combinations, finding the right starters, hoping that Damian Giannis continue, are healthy, what matters most, but also can continue sustaining a bigger workload. I think, if you're making the move to move on from Khris and adding Kuzma and seeing how the Bucks rallied when they were without Khris for a long periods of time, and obviously go to the NBA Cup, and that's kind of our. If anything, this trade deadline showed that the NBA is not afraid to break up NBA Cup champions. That's what I'm telling you.
Khris didn't play in the championship game, so
he didn't play. That is true. The Lakers, though, they moved on from NBA Cup champion Anthony Davis. They got some Luka Doncic guy. I don't know who the hell that is. But I think it's all about, like, you have your pillars. It's like who can kind of build the foundation around them. And we'll see.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, excited to see how it plays out. I mean, I think they don't have nothing. They got really fun pieces. It's Doc's got to put the puzzle together here. So we've said that a bunch. We'll watch it happen. We'll report back as the season goes on. But thanks to everyone for listening. If you haven't already, please subscribe, whether on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else. It really helps us out. You can join GSPN Premium at gspn.info. You can join our Discord server is there in our About page on that Substack page where that takes you. Appreciate everyone who checked out this episode, Pod Random, and we will talk to you next time.